The quote shows strength rather than the denial usually displayed by those on the verge of dying. She wants her friend to be strong and not mourn. Even on her deathbed, she is thinking of Jane and Jane's feelings rather than her own. I believe this shows an incredible maturity. She owns up to all her faults and says that the world will not miss her, and neither should Jane.
The fire in the novel is meant to harm Mr. Rochester. However, in the end, the fire brings he and Jane closer together. The first notable incident with fire happened during the night while Mr. Rochester was sleeping. Jane came and rescued Mr. Rochester from burning to death. Though Mr. Rochester was not harmed this first time, the second major incident with fire caused him to lose his vision and hand. He believed that Jane would no longer want to be with him because he was a blind cripple, but she proved him wrong. She stayed with him, and they enjoyed being in each other's company. The author used colons frequently when writing. In this short quote, she used 2. She uses them as one would use a side note to explain thoughts and ideas further. With these extra additions to an otherwise typical sentence, the author was able to focus more on the inner thoughts of Jane to further establish her character as one who is in love and able to overlook the faults of her lover. The author continuously uses this style of writing to give information about love that relates to the purpose of the novel. Mean humans are all over. The author incorporated many into the novel that related to the main character. First, Jane's Aunt Reed locked Jane in the Red Room to torture her mentally because her Uncle Reed died in that room. Another mean human was Mr. Brocklehurst, who consciously chose to humiliate Jane in front of her peers. This reminds me of a coach I once had. She would be intentionally mean and degrading in front of the whole team. Many people, including myself, have quit or thrown tryouts in order to be on a different team. However, in Jane Eyre, both solutions to these problematic humans involve dying. Aunt Reed died, and Mr. Brocklehurst was not allowed to run the school any longer after typhus killed a lot of children at Lowood. The awful coach referred to is still nasty, and hopefully no one will have to die for her to get fired.
Death is a common theme throughout Jane Eyre. Some of the deaths in Jane Eyre include the following. Jane's parents die. This is why she goes to live at Gateshead. Then her Uncle Reed dies shortly thereafter. Towards the end of the novel, her Aunt Reed dies. Helen Burns, who was a friend of Jane's, also dies. Many of the girls at Lowood pass away from typhus. These aren't even all of the deaths in Jane Eyre.
Though Mr. Rochester lost most of his ability to see, he enjoyed being in the presence of Jane, who he loved so greatly. Knowing that Jane was near him and with him changed his entire mood. He was no longer depressed about being a blind cripple because he now has Jane. With only a few words, the author was able to give the reason and purpose for Mr. Rochester's existence in the novel and why the main character meant so much to him and he equally to her.
Why would someone want to risk themselves when he could easily escape a painful situation? Mr. Rochester could have left Bertha, but he was too kind. He could have just hit her and got away. This shows that Mr. Rochester regrets what has happened. He does not want the others to know and suffer as he has from hiding this secret for too long. Why does she want to stay hidden from society? Mr. Rochester should have told Jane about his crazy wife when they planned to get married, rather than wait until the truth came out. Mr. Rochester wants to forget about his past life and start again with Jane, but he never informed her about what has happened and why he has hidden Bertha.
At the beginning of the novel, the reader was under the impression that Jane would never fall in love, nor would she wish to live out the rest of her life as a married woman. Then Jane realizes that she is in love with Mr. Rochester, and she wishes to be with him and care for him when he cannot. This shows a major shift in Jane, who is a dynamic character. Instead of hating the love that she never got when young, she began to accept Mr. Rochester's love, and she wishes to take care of him and do all he needs to have the love she never had.
Charlotte Bronte repeatedly discusses beauty in Jane Eyre. Mr. Rochester is described as an ugly man, while Jane is described as a plain, Quakeress governess. Towards the end of the novel, Mr. Rochester's eyes have been blinded. Jane's love for Mr. Rochester is real, so she does not care that he is blind and a cripple. The author shows that beauty does not matter for love, because neither Jane nor Mr. Rochester cared about the other's appearance.